Hey people, I read these first two lines in the last movie, and I'm going to jump right into this. This one's a little bit longer. It's the end of the paragraph. The main reason that I read it off this Bible is so you can see their interpretations, and you can see when they come real close. But this is the peers this in, P-A-R-E-S. And it actually goes with this key right here, which is a vav. They usually say is and, but it just replaces the vav. It's across from the vav. In all the Hebrew, it's a U. U-P-A-R-E-S. Appears this in. He presented. Appears this in. T-H-S. And then E-N. And most of the time, they'll give the E-N, N-I-N. And you'll see it here with a mark. So it's different. It's actually reading N-E-N or B-N. That's why they give it with. But sometimes they'll say it's in, on, among. And here's Meta, the new name for Facebook. Because here they say it means after, but most of the time they'll say it means with, but it means within. And you can see speaking, legend, and it goes with this vav here, a legend. A legend, as he alleged, something he said. And then peri, they say it meaning concerning here. They give it several definitions, but it means around. The perimeter is where that word comes from. So these first couple words they say is to whom also he presented himself. This is oios. The little wave up top tells you read it O-J-O, and then S, and this mark means you read it O-I-S-I. So you're reading O-I-O-S-I. And it's oios. And it's coming from this base word, the oio, S plural, the eyes, the I-C. It's Latin, Spanish. So this means, the Latin eyes see appears this in. And you can see it in the ancient shape meaning, the eye and to see, make, to consume. The eye, make, consume means to see. The oil see appears this in. And then the aton, at. And then the V-A-E is ves, and veses, and then Oz, into. And in the book of Job, it starts with in the land of Oz, and then it goes to the seven sons. And so the Aton is here, and they got it confused with the sun god, but it means this shape here, the Aton, and it's like the father and all his seeds, all his children. And so this word, this is chapter 3 when it says Adam called his wife Zu, because she was the mother of life. That's where this comes from, the Z-O. And it actually comes from the Z is the 7, as, as O-Z, the N seed 2. The 7 is seed 2. And so even though the Z was the Greek 6th letter, A-B-G-D-E-Z, they use it for the number 7, just like every other language. It meant 7. The number 7 forms a widespread typological pattern with the Hebrew scripture, including 7 days creation, leading to the 7th day or Sabbath, sevenfold vengeance visited upon Cain for the killing of Abel. You see in Genesis 3 in the Greek, Adam called the name of his wife Zu, for she was the mother of all the Zooanton. The Zonton. So it's the veses as into, within. And it's the 7 seed 2, within. And this is where you get your word zooplankton. And the Vasilios, meaning the kingdoms. And it has to do with taxonomy. All the taxonomy is Latinized. It's written in the Latin. And we saw that in the last movie, that second to last word. It was read backwards here. He had chosen, but it's attacks, the tax elects, and then it selects it too in its kingdom. The highest rank is the zoo, the mother of all life. Then you have your domains and kingdoms and phylum, the files, the class, order, family, and the genus and species. So 2,000 years ago, the Latins had this silly idea that all living, come from the zoo. All the living eukaryotes, the nut, EU, they say meaning well or good, but it means who, EU, the connected, who carrying nuts, who nuts. And this is everything that reproduces, through a eukaryotic cell. And this all happens through cell division, by mitosis, mito with osis, formed by a fusion of two haploid gametes to form a zygote, where the one becomes two. And in the ancient Greek, this zygote is spelled zoo, Z-U-G-O-T-O-S, the zoo, mother of all life. In protozoa, the first zoo. And this all broke down into what the scientists call the tree of life, and where you'll see the green plants up on this end, and all the mammals and animals and fungi on the other end. The tree of life, a metaphor used to explain the evolution of life and describe the relationship between organisms. And these branching diagrams were known as the keys, the Clavis, the keys. And so somewhere in there the knowledge has been lost, because when Linnaeus wrote, he only had 2 kingdoms of the vegetable and animal. But they've slowly been finding the other lost kingdoms. And now in 2015, we got 7 kingdoms again. According to this system, the tree of life consists of 3 daughters and 7 sons. And that's how this oldest book in the Bible started out, and you don't see it here. But in the Septuagint, you see that this word for anthropos, it starts with this apostrophe, and it reads, the supper, the soap is where your word soup comes from, the soup to begin, and the supporting on theropos in the land of Oz. And there were 7 sons and 3 daughters. The tree of life, the 3 domains and 7 kingdoms. The Latinized appears this in the aton, or to have it on, at veses, at V-A-E is V-E-S, veses, and then as in two. The veses as in two, within meta, within, to path they in, P-A-T-H, and then the E-I or E-Y is they, T-H-E-Y, and then it says move the E over, E-N, the path they in. Within to the path they in. And then on, A-N, on at, what on, W-T-O-N, what on. And then this is been, that reads backwards, and the N-E replaces the B, and then the N. So the N is the cycle, and the B is in. It means bend, in that period of time is bend in that cycle. And then Apollo, Apollo is the sun. And then you move the O over, Jos, J-O-S, the polis under the sun. And this proofs comes from this tech much. And this EK, you'll see it the same as the Vav is across from the key in the Greek. This EK is across from the L in the Hebrew, and it's the tel. The mark of is the tel, and the tel much, the Rio, the river is. The tel much, the river is, the proofs. And then this apostrophe that sits way out from the word like this, it means to grab the next part of this word up to the apostrophe again. And so it's the D-I-H, and it's the dictation, the word of command, the dick, and then Camaro, and that's your Latin word Camaro for the highway, the road, and then you bring the R over, and so it's RN, the road runner, and then there's two R's here. This had you read the R twice, and so it's Rema, the road runner to CN, the Camaro runner, Rama, the road runner to CN2. And then this Tessaracanta, they say is 40. I'm not sure about that. The Tesser is your old Greek word for the tess is the harvest, and this is the harvester account to, the harvester to keep account. The harvester is Saturn, the one that carries the say to go harvest the crop. The Tesser account to, the harvester account to. It also would mean death, when it's cut. And then backwards, the sun, S-O-N, the sun them on atop, A-T-P, atop of two. The sun them on atop of two, nominos is names. Then this is A, and then S-I-O, asio, and then it tells you read the O twice, atu. The sun them on atop of two, the name as Nemos as Asia Atu. And this is Asia Atu, and it's the long-eared owl, your all-seeing eyes, Asia Atu. It's in the kingdom of Animalia, which means that it can eat organic material, breathe oxygen, able to move, and reproduce sexually. And it's phylum, to phylum, and the core data. It means it possesses 5 of the signs of change. The core data shows, the signs of change. And it's and this sign comes from the old Hebrew word for two. And this shows how a family is evolved from its ancestral. And so you'll see all the old ancestral here, but as it evolves, you'll see derived traits, that shows how it branched off from what was in the past, from the pleo. In the class of Aves, and I believe this is where they made a mistake. They confused the kingdom with the vessel, the Aves, the Aves, feathered, toothless, and coming out of an egg. Asia Atu, and then back this way, two, and then move the O over, J-O-S, the Joss, the sub, to under. What is under? A legend to parry, the circle, that's the vessel they as Toa, to come out of the ova, the egg, to come out of the egg. This word Toa that they left out, this ancient word meaning come out of it, we know it because it's ancient Hebrew and also ancient Japanese. They don't know how they got it. They just know it means to come out of. And somebody wrote this article at the Christian Bushido and talking about the similarity in the Hebrew and Japanese. And they were talking about this old song they would sing. And it's a story about the goddess. She locked herself in the cave and they were trying to get her to come out. And so in this story, they would count. This became the Japanese numbers 1 through 10. Except this number for 10 is Toa. And so the people would say 1, and the gods would say Toa, come out. The people would say Fu, and the gods would say Toa, to come out. And so they would count all the way up to 9, but when it got to 10, the people and the gods would all shout Toa at the same time, meaning to come out, and that's when the goddess would come out. And in this article, they compared a bunch of words, looked at a bunch of old words. They don't know where they come from. They just know that the meaning of them, and it's same or very similar to the Hebrew meanings. And so what they've changed is the meaning of Hebrew amongst more of our history. You know, the old history says the old samurais were actually white soldiers. Samurai meaning to guard. And you see that in Genesis 3, you know, to guard the tree of life. You see that here, to guard or of guard, la samar, of samar, to, of guard to. And you see that in this list of words, you know, in samars, in samar, 9 times, the samurais, you know, the samurais, final M is an S, the spies, the watch, who guarded, the samurais, you know, the samurai, from samurai, the regard. Ojo, sa I see appears the sin, have it on at veses as in two, meta two, within two the path they in, on a tootin ben, you know, on at what on a tootin ben. You know, the Teuton, T-U-T-O-N, is the ancient Teutonic language, comes from the Teutons, the Germans. On a Teuton, the path they in, on a Teuton ben. Apollo just, the sun under. Tell much Rio is, you know, it tells much of the river, you know, the path is, how the river branches. And it's the proofs, you know, it's, you know, how the river branches tells much. You know, how the river branches tells much of how we come about. The path in on a Teuton, you know, Teuton is the ancient language, the Teutonic, where the shapes and the sound come together to give the meaning. On the path and on a Teuton in Ben, the Paulo Joyce, under the sun, and under the sun that tell much the river is. The Dick, the word of command, the Camaro runner Rama, you know, the road run her to see in, Rama to see into, the harvester count to. Sun them on a top of two, name as Asia Atu. To judge, to under a legend, to parry, to around, that's the vessel they asked. You know, a vessel is what they were in to come out of the egg. So this is the last line in this paragraph. It's just these 3 lines. And so I'll go back and read the first 2 again. It's always the last line that lays the biggest clue of what it's talking about. You just get an idea because they have everything associated, the way they figured they branched the trees, everything. You know, everything can be laid on a tree, and the tree would fit all species and everything, all knowledge. And you start with the base here, and you split up the sons and the daughters. And so not every limb on the tree would be covered in every subject, but they always started with the base of the tree of life. You know, they always started, all the knowledge started on the tree of life, and everything was overlaid on it. Not every limb used. So I'll go back and read these first 2 lines again and give me a better idea, and I'll let y'all know what I run into. But you remember on the first one, it was talking about the theophile, you know, the O file, the circular file, and the hertz it too, you know, the frequencies. But it seems that what come out of this parry, you know, around this egg, the ova. What come out was this owl with the key. And so the key is the clavis, and the fork is the clevis. So the key is in the fork. Where the forks, where the river forks is the key. Where the tree forks is the key of life. And so it seems like these ancients were trying to figure out where we come from, and they learned to follow the key of life. And they were looking at how things branched off from the from the beginning, to how we got here.
Don't forget, hooty hoot, hooty hoot. I won't forget.
Alright, I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.